In the heart of a forgotten kingdom, a forest stretched far and wide, its trees whispering secrets in a language only the winds understood. Travelers spoke of a cursed castle hidden within, a fortress imprisoned by a labyrinth of enchanted thorns, too thick to cut and too alive to ignore. They called it the Thorned Veil, and none who ventured close ever returned. But the stories were clear. Within its walls lay a treasure beyond imagination. For centuries, these whispers were dismissed as tales for the hearth, warnings for reckless wanderers. Until, one fateful night, a pair of lanterns bobbed through the darkness at the forest's edge. Phillip, a young adventurer with fire in his heart and steel at his side, stood before the veil. His jaw tightened as he surveyed the mass of brambles twisting like snakes under moonlight. At his feet lay a tattered map, edges charred and symbols etched in faded ink. "This is the place," he muttered to himself, voice trembling with anticipation. "You shouldn't be here," a soft voice interrupted. Phillip turned sharply, his hand instinctively gripping the hilt of his sword. Out of the shadows stepped a cloaked figure. Her face was pale and angular, framed by wild black hair that fell in waves over her shoulders. Her eyes gleamed with an unnatural silver light. "Who are you?" Phillip demanded. "Call me Maleficent," the woman replied, her lips curving into a half-smile. "And if you value your life, you'll leave this place and forget whatever fool's errand brought you here." "I'm not leaving," Phillip said firmly. "The castle holds answers, secrets about my family." He hesitated, but the words spilled out. "About the curse on my bloodline." At this, Maleficent tilted her head, her smile vanishing. "The curse? You're bold to think you could break it. Bold or foolish." Phillip held her gaze. "Maybe both." Maleficent studied him for a long moment, then gestured toward the wall of thorns. "If you go in, you'll find the castle, but you won't find what you're expecting." She stepped back into the shadows, her final words hanging in the air like smoke. "Not everything can be undone with a sword." Phillip turned back to the veil, gripping his blade tightly. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, slashing at the brambles. The thorns resisted, hissing and writhing like living things, but his blade, enchanted and passed down through his family, cut through them. Slowly, a path opened. The forest grew silent as he ventured deeper. The air became heavy, laced with the faint scent of roses, though none grew around him. The deeper he went, the darker the world became until all light seemed to abandon him. And then he saw it. The castle rose from the darkness like a phantom, its spires clawing at the sky. Vines crawled up its stone walls, thick with crimson flowers that seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. The drawbridge was down, leading to a yawning gate that whispered promises of both salvation and despair. Phillip hesitated, the weight of Maleficent's warning pressing on his chest. But he pressed forward, his boots echoing against the stone bridge. Inside, the air was cold, and the silence deafening. Shadows danced across the walls, forming shapes that twisted and flickered like memories trying to take form. At the center of the grand hall stood a throne, and upon it, a figure. She was beautiful, her golden hair spilling over her shoulders like molten sunlight. Her skin was pale as marble, her lips a soft red. But her eyes were closed and her chest rose and fell in a slow, rhythmic slumber. Around her, the vines twisted and coiled, forming a barrier that dared anyone to come closer. Phillip stepped forward cautiously. As he approached, he noticed something odd. Carvings on the walls, etched in a language he couldn't understand. They seemed to shimmer faintly, almost alive. "She's been waiting for you," a voice echoed. Philip whirled around, his sword raised. Maleficent stood at the edge of the hall, her eyes fixed on the sleeping figure. "What are you talking about?" Philip asked. Maleficent stepped closer, her gaze heavy with something that looked almost like regret. "Aurora, that's her name. She's the last of the line that cursed your family, and the only one who can undo it." Philip's grip on his sword tightened. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because breaking curses is never simple," Maleficent said, her voice soft but firm. "Aurora isn't just sleeping. She's tied to the curse itself. If you wake her, the curse on your bloodline might break, but it will unleash something far worse." "What does that mean?" Philip demanded. Before Maleficent could answer, the vines around Aurora began to writhe, their thorns gleaming. A low hum filled the air, growing louder until it became a deafening roar. Philip turned back to Aurora. Her eyes were open now, but they weren't the soft blue of the stories. They were black as night, and they stared at him with an intensity that made his blood run cold. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered, her voice layered with something ancient and otherworldly. The room trembled, the shadows on the walls springing to life and clawing toward Philip. He raised his sword, but the shadows were relentless, forcing him back. Maleficent stepped forward, her hands glowing with green fire. "Philip, listen to me. You have to choose. Break the curse and free her, or destroy her and save yourself." Philip's heart pounded as he stared at Aurora, her once beautiful face now twisted into something monstrous. He thought of his family, of the generations cursed before him. But he also thought of Maleficent's warning. Not everything could be undone with a sword. In the end, Philip made his choice. With a steady hand, he lowered his blade and stepped toward Aurora. The shadows clawed at him, the air growing colder with each step, but he pressed on. "I'm not here to destroy you," he said, his voice steady despite the terror coursing through him. "I'm here to set us both free." Aurora's black eyes flickered with something. Recognition, perhaps. The vines loosened their grip, and the shadows paused. Philip reached out and touched her hand. In that moment, the world exploded into light. And they start remembering everything. The story starter centuries ago on the eve of Aurora's christening, a night when the stars seemed to tremble in the inky sky. The grand hall of the castle glittered with golden chandeliers and tapestries woven with threads of moonlight. The king and queen, desperate for a child, had invited every noble, sorcerer, and wise woman to celebrate the birth of their daughter. Among the guests were 3 radiant fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, who gifted Aurora with beauty, grace, and the promise of kindness. But just as Merryweather prepared to bestow her blessing, the air grew cold, and a dark figure emerged from the shadows. It was Maleficent, a sorceress whose name was both feared and revered. Draped in robes as black as midnight and crowned with horns that seemed to pierce the heavens, she approached the cradle with a smile that chilled the blood. "So, I wasn't invited," she drawled, her voice dripping with mockery. "No matter. I, too, have a gift for the princess." With a wave of her staff, the room dimmed, and her curse fell like a shroud. On her 16th birthday, Aurora would prick her finger on a spindle and fall into a sleep from which she could never wake. Only true love's kiss could break the spell. The room erupted in chaos, but Maleficent vanished in a swirl of green fire before anyone could stop her. The king, desperate to protect his daughter, ordered every spinning wheel in the kingdom burned. Yet deep down, he knew fire could not destroy fate. The fairies, realizing the curse was too potent to break, took Aurora to live in secrecy in the forest, raising her as a peasant named Briar Rose. For 16 years, the princess grew up unaware of her royal lineage, her days filled with the music of birdsong and the rustle of leaves. But this is where the tale twists. On the morning of her 16th birthday, Aurora awoke with a start. Her dreams had been vivid, filled with visions of a towering castle encased in thorns and a shadowy figure calling her name. Shaking off the unease, she ventured deeper into the woods, drawn by a melody that seemed to echo her dreams. There, she met a stranger, a young man with a kind smile and a sword strapped to his side. His name was Phillip, and though their meeting felt like chance, it was anything but. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the fairies revealed the truth. Aurora was the lost princess, and she had to return to the castle that very night to confront her destiny. Torn between fear and curiosity, Aurora agreed, but the forest seemed darker than usual as they journeyed toward the castle. The air was thick with whispers, and the trees appeared to lean closer, as if eavesdropping on their conversation. When they reached the castle, it was eerily silent. The grand halls, once filled with life, were now shrouded in cobwebs and shadows. At the heart of the castle stood a spinning wheel, its needle glinting like a predator's fang. Despite the fairies' warnings, Aurora felt an irresistible pull. Her hand reached out, and the moment her finger touched the spindle, the world around her shifted. Aurora did not simply fall into a sleep. She was transported to a realm between worlds, a place where time and reality blurred. Here, the true nature of the curse revealed itself. Maleficent's spell was not just an act of vengeance, but a key to unlocking a prison that held an ancient, malevolent force. The sorceress had been a guardian, her dark magic a necessary evil to keep the entity contained. With Aurora's touch, the seal weakened, and the entity began to stir. After waiting for a century, she shattered the entity's hold. The realm of dreams dissolved, and Aurora awoke in the castle, her hand clasped in Philip's. The kingdom rejoiced, but the story did not end there. Aurora chose to rule not as a passive queen, but as a guardian of the balance between light and dark. She sought out Maleficent, offering her forgiveness and a place by her side. The sorceress, though wary, accepted, becoming both mentor and ally. And so the kingdom emerged from the mist, its people no longer bound by fear, but united by hope. Aurora and Philip's love became a symbol not of salvation, but of partnership and strength, proving that even the darkest curses could lead to the brightest dawns. And they lived, not just happily, but wisely, ever after. If tales are your thing, you know what to do. Smash like, subscribe to the Multi-Tale, and let's keep the story going. Catch you in the next one.